So what are you doing with what God has entrusted to you? What are you doing with the money and the resources God has given you? In Luke 16, Jesus tells a story about a servant to a very rich man who he'd been entrusted with taking care of this rich man, the master's accounts, his business, and the servant was wasting the master's possessions, is what verse 1 says. So the master's coming to settle up accounts with his servant, and the servant knows he's going to get in trouble. So he goes to all the master's debtors, and he goes to them and in an effort to build some relationships that he hopes will last, he says, so how much do you owe? Do you owe $100? And the guy says, yeah. And he says, well, I tell you what, if you'll sit down and write me a check for 50, we'll call it even. He goes to the next debtor, and he says, how much do you owe? And he says, well, I owe 100. He says, well, if you'll write 80, we'll call it a day. And so obviously he's settling accounts, and it's cutting the master short on the money. But the master actually commends him for his shrewdness, and basically tells him, or says about him, that he was being wise. He was being shrewd with the money because he was actually caring more about the relationships and caring more about what would last beyond the use of this money. Now, most of the parables that Jesus tells, the master represents God, but that's not the case in this story. In this story, everybody's wicked. The master is wicked. This servant who is settling accounts is wicked, and the people who are settling accounts with him, I suppose, are wicked as well. But that's not the case here. But Jesus does use this story to teach us, and what he teaches us about this is to be faithful with our unrighteous wealth. So to be faithful with your money. And he's teaching us that relationships matter more than money. He's teaching us that God matters more than money. He's teaching us that the things that we have, we're not owners over those things. We are stewards of them. And so I just want to encourage you that the things that God has given you, he's given those things to you not just for your benefit, not just for you to use for yourself, but to use those things for eternal benefit, eternal gain. Things that really matter for eternity. And those are relationships, and obviously the relationship with God more than anything. So he finishes up this section in verse 13 with this. He says, no servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and your money. So I just want to ask you, is God your God, or is your money your God? If you use your resources for yourself, probably your money is your God. If you use your resources to build relationships with others that'll last it for eternity and to glorify God, then God is your God, and that's awesome. But how are you spending the money and the things that God has given you? I hope it's for eternal things. All right, blessings to you from afar.